Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
My
Good
screen
morning,
is
sir.
okay. Let me check.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Check if my screen is visible or not.
Yes, sir.
Visible,
It's
sir.
it's visible. Okay, let me open. No. Right now it is 10 a.m. So we have started exactly at 10 a.m. Today we will start structure. So first of all, let me formally characterize what structure is. A derived data type. You know, I think what is mean by derived data type. Integer, float, characters, these are nothing but fundamental data types. But derived data type is something that is made of fundamental data type. So structure is like that. I think you know array. So array is also a type, derived data type which is made of same type of elements like let's say 10 integers, 10 floating point, 10 characters like that. So it's collection of the same data type of element, but as a whole, it's nothing but the derived data type because it's not a fundamental something, it's collection of fundamental data types. Okay. Similarly, structure is also a derived data type. Its elements are heterogeneous. Heterogeneous. What does it mean? It means dissimilar, not same. Elements of structure is elements of structure are heterogeneous or dissimilar type of it. That means unlike array, actually in array we studied that the elements are homogeneous or similar, but in structure the elements are heterogeneous or of different types. Elements are stored in contiguous memory location. So I think that point is also available when we discussed array. That means contiguous memory location means one after another. In array, if I recall the scenario, the first element, then second element, then third element. So Similarly, in structure also we have this type of thing, but here the problem is that elements are not of same type. So maybe one of them may be integer, then floating point, then something else. In this way, actually, if all the elements, all the dissimilar elements are clubbed into a unit, then it is called a structure. It is very important for modeling real world scenario because in real world scenario the attribute or the property of some object are not same type. Let's say very simple example in the student record. It can be employee record, can be record of something else. But in student record, you find that there are many different attributes: student's name, roll number, age, address, contact number, department. In this way, there are many different attributes. So if I represent name, what should be the type? I think it should be a string or character array. Roll number, it may contain some alphanumeric character, or sometimes it is purely integer. So it may be integer. I'm considering a very simple case, but sometimes let's say consider your roll numbers. There are some alphabetic characters also present. So it can be alphabetic something. Uh, alphanumeric things are represented using string because age, it can be integer. Address, again it's a string. Contact number, it's integer, but sometimes long integers are used because contact number requires many digits. Department, it is also string like that. So actually, when we model any real world scenario, then elements corresponding to a particular entity is are not of same types. For example, this is just a record for a record structure of only one student, but consider in your class there are nearly 100 students, or if I combine all the groups, then there are 700 to 800 students are there in first year, and in university there are many students. However, if I like to do some programming, sometimes everything is getting digital, so we have to do some programming. So in that case, actually, if we separately declare the variables, then you can imagine how complicated it can be to write any program. Okay, let's say name. There are many different names. Thousands of names are there. So actually, if you create, even if you create an array, character array, that is difficult to manage. And roll number itself, there are thousands of roll numbers. I think more than thousands. So how do we write program using when we volume of records are very high, because if one or two students, it's a matter of one or two students, we may not bother about what is going on, or we may also separately declare the elements within a structure. But if there are multiple elements, then managing these things will be complex. And to tackle that kind of thing, you have to declare all sort of things as a unit. Okay, as a unit you have to declare all sort of things such that if I represent s for a student, S will contain some components. Similarly, if I declare say another student, let's say it is S2, so it will also contain all the attributes of a student. So in this way, actually, we have to manage. Otherwise, if we like to manage the individual components, then it is very difficult. So that is one of the aspects of using structure. In object-oriented scenario also, there are varieties of applications in this type of things. And it is also hiding the complication. That means you have lots of names, lots of roll numbers, lots of ages, lots of addresses or different types of things, and if they are scattered across your programming environment, so it's very difficult. Rather, if you mean S1, then it means it has all components. So by S1, you can represent something, so you don't have to think about the detail of it sometimes. Okay, let's say I have designed one function for comparing the marks of two students like that. Uh, let's say it's not like this. So if I pass these two arguments, S1 and S2, then it will return something. So you don't have to bother about that which marks, what is the marks of student S1, what is the marks of student S2. That means you can generate some high level operations rather than getting the ground level detail. Okay. So that is very useful for writing efficient programs, because every time we don't need to bother about detailing. We can we can combine the detail into an unit. Then that unit is sufficient to do different types of things. That is something else. That is another type of, that is known as also abstraction. So in C programming, there is no concept of abstraction. Abstraction concept is available in object-oriented programming, but structure actually provides some level of abstraction, because when I mean S or like that, when I uh, write or understand S, then we also we understand the detail of it, but without bothering about. Okay, so that is a good way of handling program, and structure is very important. If you are computer science or IT students in your second year, probably you will get a specific subject of data structure where you can prepare different types of structures and prepare different types of operations related to the structure. So that is very interesting subject, and laboratory is also important. But now let us move on to some other types of things. How do we declare a structure? And before getting into the detail of structure, it is very important question for our exam also, that what is the difference between array and structure? So if you look at this word, heterogeneous or dissimilar type, so I think this is the difference. Rest of the things are same as in array. Okay. So in array is a derived data type. Elements of array are homogeneous, and elements of array are stored in contiguous memory location. These things are same, except homogeneous. You have to write heterogeneous, nothing else. Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, do we have to initialize the size of the structure?
Size of the structure, no, actually size of the structure comes from the elements of the structure. Okay, I am getting into that your point. It is not required to initialize, but if your structure contains some array or some complex elements, then we have to initialize that size. Okay, let's say, okay, I'm coming to your point actually. What is the structure here? Sorry. Somehow I have just copied that thing. That is not my objective. My objective is to declare one structure. So how do we create any element, and that will also answer to your question. You have to write struct and name of the structure. This is keyword. You never write S in capital. Okay, it should be always small. Struct should be small s, small t, small r, u, c, t. Never write capital in it. It's a keyword like if, else, while. Okay. So this is name of the structure. We are creating a structure name student. It has elements like name. So we have to declare character name. Let's say it contains 20 characters. Role. Sorry, it's not an integer. It's integer. So,
Sir, you are not audible.
okay. Yeah, right now is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There may be some sort of problem. Okay, character name, integer role, integer age, character address, and let's say contact number. I am writing for the time being integer, but maybe while implementation you have to change it differently. You may have to write long integer or like that, but for simplicity I am writing integer. Department. Department means it is also character array. Let's say sometimes that male female is specified, so gender can be character also. In this way actually you have to model or design your student. This is the data type you are going to design. Okay, so this is actually the keyword for, and this is actually name of the structure, or better to say name of data type. It is much more meaningful because you are creating one data type. Mind it, like integer, float, you are creating a data type that will contain some other data types, and these are nothing but the elements of data type. Okay, now coming back to your question, what should be the size? There is what should be the size of it. Now, before discussing size, we have to write that how do we actually declare size, or how do we declare structure element. So we write in this way. After that, we have to write in this way: struct student s. Struct student is like a data type. You have like integer a, it is struct student. Struct student is like a data type you have created already. Now, what is the size? Size of s. What is the size of this one? Each character contains 1 byte. So it's a character array of 20 byte, 20 characters. So it is nothing but 20 byte. Similarly, integer means 4 byte. For Windows-based compiler, it is 2 byte, but most of the people use Linux-based compiler. That's why it is 4 byte I am considering. Similarly, I am considering here also 4 byte. Tell me what will be the size of here?
Or 20 bytes?
20 bytes.
20,
20 bytes.
20 byte. Here
4 bytes?
4
4
byte.
4
bytes.
bytes.
4,
Again,
10 bytes.
department
10 bytes.
10
10
bytes.
bytes.
10 bytes. Okay, and gender
1
1
byte.
byte.
1 byte. Now, what is the total number of total byte? Sum them up. 20 plus 20, 40. Then
59.
53.
59.
53.
63, sir.
63.
63 bytes, sir.
53 bytes.
63.
63 or 53?
63, sir.
63.
63.
63, 63. I also think so, because 40, 20, 20 plus 10 itself it is 50. So I think, yeah. Okay. So what is the size of S? Here it is nothing but the 63 bytes. Okay. So when you declare structure element whose definition is right here, so 63 bytes are allocated in a main memory. Okay. Like integer, when you declare integer variable 4 bytes, so here actually the allocation is 63 bytes. And in this way, actually, the allocation is done. Okay, let us move on to different page, because it will be very difficult for us to understand.
So these sites done
See?
automatically. We have to not write anything else in the code.
That we don't have to write anything else. When we are declaring the structure elements, then these bytes will be automatically generated. That the 63 bytes will be allocated by the compiler when we write struct student s. Okay. This is data type. Consider this is like a data type, integer s, like that. So in this way, actually, and what is the layout in memory layout? Actually, name, first element was name, I think. So in memory, actually, 0, 1, in this way, actually, 19. Next, what is roll number? Then age, and then address. I'm trying to make it contiguous, but it's not getting contiguous. There are spaces. Then contact number, it cannot be integer. It's not very realistic. It should be long int, but handling long int at your stage will be difficult. So that's why I have written. But when you do programs in your lab, you should do it in different ways. Either array, you have to take integer array or long int. Okay. And contact number is department 10 and gender 1 character. Okay. So sorry. This is contact. Department gender whatever. So, in memory actually, and the total allotment, memory allotment for the structure variable is 63 bytes as per our definition. Okay. Now, how do we identify these elements? We will identify not by name, we will identify by age dot name. So I am writing age in different color. Similarly, age dot role, because age is here actually. So structure variable dot element. This is the format of accessing these members. Age dot department, age dot gender. In this way, actually, we get. Okay. So if I like to assign something in roll number, so you have to write age dot roll equal to say 12, like this. So 12 will come here. But if I write roll equal to 12, these things will not execute. Okay. So you when you are going to access any structure element, so its format is structure variable dot element. In this format, you have to access. Okay. So I think this part is little bit clear to you. If you have any doubt, please tell me. This is the memory accounting of all structural variables, and this is a rough layout of the structural variable and their accessing mechanism. Now we will read, we will understand how do we put element into the memory, into the structure, and how do we read the values of the elements from the structure. Reading and writing is little bit complex, so that's why I think structure requires at least 3 classes, because there are lots of issues related to structure. And if you are CST or IT, you must have to learn structure properly. Otherwise, in your second sem or in your second year, it will be very complex for every programming. Okay? Now static initialization. Static initialization means initialization at the time of declaration. Okay. So I also write the meaning. Initialization at the time of declaration. Now, what does it mean when we create? I think couple of minutes earlier, I just have shown you the syntax. Struct student s. This is the way we create a structure. Okay. So for the time being, I am actually reducing the structure. I am actually making the structure very small. So student, because when you deal with multiple example, so many things it will be little difficult for me to demonstrate at a time. But while writing a program, it's not a big issue. You can copy and paste. So let's say I consider a student has only name and roll number, nothing else. So these two are the elements of the structure. Now, how do we write the structure? Struct student. I am reducing the structure actually for simplicity. Character name 20 and integer roll number. Now this is the statement struct student is. You know already this is the variable, but after that by putting equal to we may write name and let's say it is Novin or like that, something like that. So we have to write within double quote because we are dealing with the character variable, and then let's say its roll number is 12. So in this way actually we statically initialize the structure variable. Now what does it mean? In memory, s dot name, it means n a v I n. I'm not writing the null characters because we don't have that much of space here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this way up to 19. Okay. And age dot roll is nothing but 12. This is the scenario inside the memory. This is S actually. So at the time of structured declaration, we can also initialize its variables. That is also okay. And another is dynamic initialization or runtime initialization. That is also okay. So any problem to use this? I think you have also seen that kind of thing in array, because in array when we declare integer array like that, array of size 5, we write in this way 20, 30, 90, 110. In this way we write. And just I'm comparing these two scenario. It means actually 10, 20, 30, 90, 100. Any problem to understand these two? This is just an analogy because the principle of array and structure are the same. Array deals with same type of elements and structure deals with different types of elements. But like array, we can also initialize structure at the time of declaration. Any problem to understand this?
Understood, sir.
Understood, sir. Okay, understood. If you don't have the problem, actually, along with the theoretical class, you have to do some lab assignments as well as you have to practice by yourself. Otherwise, you cannot understand the syntax. And runtime or dynamic initialization. Dynamic initialization means, I think in this way we have to do, we declare the structure first, start, student, is, but we do not put any element in it. Okay. Rather, we'll ask user to put element. Printf, enter name. I'm not writing new lines or any type of decorations. So please adjust at the time of programming. No, it cannot be a scanner. I think it's a string, so better we'll use getS. GetS, I think, sorry, GetS is dot name. This is the name of the string actually. Okay. Is dot name. There is some problem because I haven't saved it. Printf enter roll this time scanf %d ampersand is dot roll. So in this way, if user supplies something for name, that will be inserted in s dot name, and if user supplies role, that will be inserted in s dot role. I think you can understand what s dot name and what s dot role is. So this is one of the ways we can supply, and that is another way is the dynamic initialization of taking value from user. Taking values from user. So sometimes it is asked also in your program that do something using n or like that. N is user's input. So when it is specified with user's input, you cannot write the value in a code. You have to take it from the user. It's mandatory. Okay. So any problem
Represent the size.
which represent the size?
Sir, s dot roll this one.
No, s dot roll doesn't represent the size. S dot roll, s dot name, these actually represent the elements. If you write instead of roll, s dot roll, instead of s dot roll, you write simple roll. So that will throw compiler error because roll is not a variable here. Roll is a variable inside your structure element. Okay. So directly, if you like to access role, that is not allowed. So through structure element you have to access. Through through structure variable you have to access. Here the structure variable is S. So inside S there is name and roll number. Okay. Understood or not?
Yes.
So in this way, if something is inside any structure, then you have to use it. It is mandatory to use it using dot operator, but there are some other ways other than dot operator. I will discuss that thing later. So it is one of the ways. Okay. Now, if something is pointer, something is related to pointer, that means if I have to deal with pointer to structure, then instead of dot, we have to use arrow. Instead of dot, we have to use arrow. Okay. What does it mean by it? We are not allowed to use arrow. Now we write struct student is. This is structure, and now we write struct student star p. Okay, you can also write using comma here, s comma star p, no problem. Like integer s, integer star p. I think you understand. Now p equal to, let's say, ampersand s. So actually s is a variable here which contains also name and roll number. So that is actually pointed by p variable. Now if I have to access any element, let's say I am trying to take the name from user, so you have to write getS p arrow name. I'm not writing the printf statement that is implied here. You have to write. Similarly, if you have to take the roll number from user, you have to write scanf %d ampersand p arrow roll. So mind it that when you are using any pointer to point any structure variable, your syntax changes actually a little bit. Instead of dot, arrow comes, but usually if no pointer is involved, you have to write dot. Any problem? When is your next class?
Sir, Tuesday.
No. After this class, when is your next class?
11,
Sir,
sir.
from 11.
11. Okay.
Chemistry class.
Then maybe I have only 10 minutes, nearly 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
not more than that. 15 minutes, but actually some space is required between two classes. Otherwise, it is difficult for you to switch from one class to another. So, okay. Some amount of time. Oh, okay. So this is dynamic initialization. We know little bit. static initialization. So now printing values from a structure. Printing values from structure elements. So same like as reading elements, we have to write put s dot name. If it is pointer, then put p arrow name, or you can also use printf. If it is pointer, you have to write so in this way actually we can read elements from a structure and we can also write elements into it. So when basic reading and writing is over, then we can go for processing. Okay, any type of processing. But before that, I like to discuss that if there are multiple structure elements or multiple structures we need to allot. So how do we do this? Sorry. S1, say let's say 3 student data. In this way, we write like integer A, B, C. We compare with this syntax. No. There is one mistake actually. It's not struct. It will be struct student.
Sir, there should be arrow roll method.
B arrow. Okay, this. Name role. So in this way, actually, we can declare. If we have to declare multiple structure elements, so S1, S2, S3. So each of them will have name and roll number, name and roll number, name and roll number. Okay. So how do we identify this? S1 dot name. We refer this using S1 dot name. This is S1 dot roll. This is S2 dot name, S2 dot roll. Similarly, it is S3 dot name, S3 dot roll. So in this way, actually, we refer the elements. Never write name roll. Okay, because name and role, these things are available in all these three structures, and not only that, hmm, since you haven't directly declared these elements as name and role, so your compiler cannot read it. You have written inside a structure, so that's why it should be accessed through your structure only. You cannot directly access name and role. Okay. So similarly, if you like to put element, we will write put s1 dot name, put s2 dot name. But problem is, if s1, s2, s3 is represent students, so there are also thousands of students in any department, any university or like that. So how do we tackle that thing? So that requires another concept, that is nothing but the combination of array and structure. Okay. You have seen that structure may contain array. Okay. But this is something new, array of structure. If you have the idea of array, I don't think it will be very difficult for you to understand. So basically array of structure is by nature it is an array, but elements of array are structures. Each of the elements are homogeneous and they are nothing but structures. This is actually S, this is 0, then 1, 2. So basically we call it S0, S1, S2. You remember the concept of array. Okay. Try to remember the concept of array. So this is nothing but S0 dot name, S1 dot name, S2 dot name. Try to understand. If you cannot understand, maybe you cannot deal with this type of things. S0 dot role, S0 dot, sorry, this is S1, S1 dot role, S2 dot role. Now in generally we can use si dot name or si dot role. That is I runs for 1, 2, sorry, this is 0, 1 and 2. So we can very easily tackle this situation using loop. So inside a loop, if I write si dot name, si dot role, we can also use for taking input from user or also display a content. Understood or not? If you haven't understood, then you have to write the entire code. Otherwise, I think it's not very difficult. Okay. Inside a for loop, if you write put si dot name or get si dot name, I think then depending on the value of I, the array cell is being accessed, and each of the cell is nothing but a structure variable. So according to that, some variable is accessed. Now this element, I think this element is nothing but the array, character array. So it has also an index 0, 1, 2, in this way up to 19. Now, if I like to access, if I like to explicitly value in 19th location, let's say this location, I am going to edit. So how do I do this? S0 dot name 18, I think 19th location means 18, equal to, let's say I write A. So mind it, you should not be confused with the index of S and index of the element of S. So these two things are very tricky when you are going to use. Okay. So I think I don't have much time left here. So now you just tell me if you have any confusion in understanding this concept. Any confusion to understand this? Don't get confused with the index of array and index of the structure element. Okay. Index of array which is used as a structure element. So sometimes some counters are used. So for example, for I am using this. For manipulating this string, I am using, let's say, J counter or like that. So don't get confused with these two different types of counters. Okay. Now tell me if you have any problem or not to understand this. If you don't have any problem and if you have marked your attendance, you may leave one by one. Okay.